The problem with the witness protection program, I have seen so many cases where an informant gets on the stand, puts his left hand on a Bible, right hand swears to tell the truth, and lies through his teeth. They get the protection of the witness protection program, they get their sentence reduced, and before you know it, they're out back on the street committing crimes again. It's just a tool for guys on the street to manipulate the government with. Hey everybody, welcome to another sit down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. Everything is okay on this end. Today I want to talk about something that really upsets me because throughout my years in my former life in Cosa Nostra, I had many encounters with witnesses who had entered the witness protection program. So I want to talk a little bit about WITSEC. A lot of people have been hitting me up on it lately. Some of you may know that John Gotti Jr. is coming out with some kind of a production, I believe. It's called WITSEC Mafia. And what John is talking about is all those people that went into the program and got out of the program and then became street guys and started committing criminal activity again. I'm not going to get into all of that. That's John's thing, and I understand he's worked hard on it, and it should be released in the coming months. That's what I'm told. Don't know that for a fact, but it's really something important to me because it had a tremendous impact on my family and my life. So I want to get into that a little bit. Before I do, thank you all those of you who have subscribed. You're making the channel grow. Subscribe. You get some extra benefits by subscribing. You get alerts when we come up there and see new content. So we appreciate when you subscribe. We hear a lot of subscribers thanking us for the great content that we continue to work hard to put in, and we really appreciate it. MichaelFranzese.com, jump on. The community is growing. My crew is growing. You're going to hear testimonials from people that are just doing so well and really benefiting from everything that we're putting in there, all the content, the personal contact with me, and obviously how they're holding up each other. So, MichaelFranzese.com or join.MichaelFranzese.com. Let's get into the witness protection program. Something you may not know is that a fellow by the name of Gerald Scher, who worked for the Justice Department under Robert Kennedy. He was the guy that formed the WITSEC program. And if you read up about it, you might be a little bit stunned. I didn't know this. But this WITSEC program was formed because of my father, Sonny Franzese. There was a case pending. There was a witness that was going to testify. They were trying to get him to testify against my father, according to Gerald Scher. He refused because he said if he did, his life would be in jeopardy, and he refused to cooperate. That's what stimulated the idea for Gerald Scher to form this WITSEC program. Robert Kennedy at the time was the Attorney General. You know, he didn't like the mob. I think I told you this story before about he was the one that really went after my father and started the whole prosecution against him. He was the guy. And so Gerald Scher worked under him. He got the okay to start the program, and it was started way back when. And I'll tell you why I'm upset with it, for a couple of things. Then I'm going to ask you a question too. Because listen, guys on the street, they know how to manipulate things. A lot of guys that became informants and went into the witness protection program manipulated the program. And I'll tell you this, I'm going to say it straight out. I don't care what anybody says. This is my experience, and I believe it's truthful. I have never seen, I've sat through many trials, I have never seen a witness, former mob witness, who got into the program, get up on the stand, put his left hand on a Bible, right hand swear to tell the truth, and then lie through his teeth. Not about everything, but about certain things, no doubt about it. They're manipulative. They know how to use the program. Hey, you know, I come up with a story. I talk about a certain defendant. The government wants to put this guy in jail. My testimony is valuable. I'm already in trouble, but I can get my sentence cut shorter. I don't have to do a day in prison. I mean, think about it. I mean, I was a guy on the street. You knew how to manipulate things. And so many of these guys that went into the program manipulated the prosecution, came up with a story that they wanted to hear because they wanted an indictment against somebody that had a big name. Of course, John Gotti stands out. We all know that. And what do? They go into the program, they tell the story, they get a sweetheart deal. Before you know it, they're back out on the street. Happened a lot. Happens so often. And it was the WITSEC program that really, caused a lot of guys on the street to turn informant because it was a tool that they used to manipulate the government to get out of prison. Going back to my father's case, now I want to tell you this about my dad. Ever since I was 5 years old and old enough to understand something, my father preached to me against drugs, hated drugs, would never do anything with a drug addict. He hated it. He would make up stories like parables and tell me about drug dealers and how they destroyed their lives and never would allow me to get anywhere near a drug. It's a shame that in my family, both my sister and my brother were drug addicts, but my father had already been in prison. There's a whole story behind that. You know it, I'm not going to get into that. He hated drugs. When his case finally comes down, who are the witnesses against him? 4 drug addicts. 4 drug addicts, punks on the street dealing drugs. My dad would never have had anything to do with these people. I know that for a fact, and I've said this, people. I'll take it to my grave that my dad was framed on this bank robbery case. I was guilty of the crime that I committed. I pled guilty. I did my time. My dad may have done a lot of bad things in his life. I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm not covering for that. But that particular case that he was sentenced to 50 years in prison for, he was innocent of. Again, I'll take it to my grave. 4 guys, they get together. They were guys in Queens. They knew my father. He had a big reputation. Everybody knew. They may have hung out with some people that knew my dad. They get in trouble for robbing banks across the country. Who robs banks? I don't know any mob guys that rob banks, at least not through my experience. Maybe way back when, okay, but certainly not my dad's thing. They get together. And while they're in a prison cell, they start to concoct a story. One of them told us later on there was an FBI agent that dropped the name Sonny Franzese. Hey, if you give us something about Sonny, we may be willing to talk to you. So now they get together and they put this whole scheme together. Before they mentioned my father, they talked about somebody else, a guy by the name of Tony Polisi. Tony Polisi was the one initially that ordered the bank robberies that they carried out. It wasn't my dad. It was a guy by the name of Tony Polisi. But what they found out is Tony Polisi didn't have a big enough name. He wasn't strong enough to get them what they wanted. So when the FBI agent drops the name Sonny Franzese, now they get together again. Hey, you know what? Originally it was this guy, Tony, but the real boss, we didn't want to tell you who he was Sonny Franzese. He's the one that gave the orders. It was at one meeting in a hotel room in Queens, New York, Kew Gardens, that my dad was supposed to have ordered these bank robberies. That was it. They never have him receiving the money. They didn't have him on tape. They had nothing. They had 4 guys that concocted this story that my father gave them the order to rob all the banks that they robbed. They robbed them, so there was credibility in the fact that the banks were robbed. But they had the jury somehow believe, that my dad ordered the robbery of these banks. They go into the witness protection program. What happens? They get lenient sentences, 3, 4, 5 years for robbing 6, 7, 8 banks across the country, for dealing drugs, for doing all of this stuff. Now, what happens with one of the bank robbers? The main guy, John Cordero, a very violent guy. He actually hit his wife with an axe. Gave her over 2,000 stitches, had her in a hotel room, was feeding her tranquilizers, so that she wouldn't bleed to death. He goes downstairs to sharpen the axe. As he's sharpening the axe, the woman, Eleanor Cordero, his wife at the time, who threatened, the reason he was hitting her with the axe, because after the fact, she threatened to go to the FBI and tell the truth, that they concocted this whole story. So he's going to get rid of her, right? Somehow she gets to a phone, calls 911. The cops came, they arrest Cordero, but what happens? The FBI steps in and they give him a clean slate. He didn't do 1 day in prison for hitting his wife with an axe and getting 2,000 stitches, almost killed her. Now, I spent months with Eleanor Cordero because she gave me an affidavit. She took a lie detector test. In the lie detector test, she said that her husband made up this whole story. The other 3 witnesses did also. We have another one of the witnesses a guy by the name of Jimmy Parks. He smuggled out a letter to his wife while he was in prison, and in the letter he said, "We framed this guy, Sonny Franzese." My point is this: they used the witness protection program to sell the government a bill of goods and then get out on the street and continue their criminal activity. That was my first experience with it. Okay, so right off the bat, I knew there was something wrong here. Next, Larry Iorizzo, my partner in the gasoline business. He turns informant and starts to talk about the gasoline business. And you know what? There was credibility in that. I'll be honest with you. He was my partner. We did steal taxes from the government, no doubt about it. We ran that operation together for 7 years. We had the Russian mob guys. My partners were with me. That part was truthful. But what happened was, Rudy Giuliani was indicting me on a big case. I've spoken about this before. Larry Iorizzo had already become an informant, and he was working with the Eastern District of New York. Giuliani was the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. When Giuliani heard there was a key witness that was testifying against me in another case, he said, "I want Iorizzo to testify in my case." Well, there was a fight between the two districts, from what I understand. Giuliani won. He was a very significant prosecutor at that time. They put Iorizzo on the stand against me in a case that he had no knowledge of, none whatsoever. He got up on the stand and talked about something he had no clue. He made it up, lied throughout the whole testimony. What happens? Jury didn't believe him. I get acquitted. But what happened with Iorizzo? He got 5 years for stealing hundreds of millions of dollars along with me. He gets out of prison. I go to jail. I took a plea. He didn't testify against me in that case. I take a plea. I go and do my time, 10-year prison sentence, $15 million restitution. And by the way, there's some chatter on social media from people that really don't know what they're talking about in the comment section, and said that guys in the mob are not allowed to take a plea. I don't know where anybody ever got that. Guys took pleas all the time. If you can shorten your sentence, shorten your exposure, you take a plea. There's nothing against that. When you're pleading guilty for something that you did without putting anybody else in trouble, you're allowed to do that. I don't know where anybody said you weren't, but that's an absolute false statement. I took a plea. It was sanctioned by my boss, Carmine Persico, at the time. I did my time. That was it. But Iorizzo, after getting 5 years, gets back out on the street, moves his entire family to Texas because he had to get out of New York, okay, after he got out of the program. He leaves the program, goes to Texas, and brings his whole family into the gas business and starts stealing taxes again. He did it again. So he used the witness protection program, lied in a central case against me, gets back out after he does his 3 or 4 years in some cushion place. I don't even think he went to prison. And he goes back into criminal activity. What happens? He got indicted along with his family. Members in his family testified against him. He gets 20 years. So what did the WITSEG program do? Okay, they put me in jail for a couple of years. I get it. But this is the kind of, why do you tolerate this kind of stuff? There are many others. Henry Hill, you know, was in the program. I'm not going to comment on whether Henry Hill's statements were false or not. I happen to know for a fact that some of the things that he said about Paulie Vario and Jimmy Burke were just not true. I know that for a fact, but I'm not going to get into all of that. Henry's gone now. No sense in talking about it. Joey Messina, the boss of the Bonanno family. Let me tell you how I believe Messina might have manipulated the witness protection program. He was convicted of 7 murders. 7 murders. The approach to the government, I should say, and say, look, I have information for you. And the information that he stated was that a guy by the name of Vinny Bassiano, was plotting to kill a U.S. attorney. The government, when they hear that, I'm telling you, the antenna goes up. They wanted to hear what Joey had to say. The fascinating thing to me is Ed McDonald, who was the former head of the organized crime strike force in the Eastern District of New York, my prosecutor, I took the plea to him, represented, when he went in private practice, he represented Joey Messina. Now, I knew Joey. I didn't know him well. My cousin, Carmine Franzese, Tutti, was a made guy. He knew Joey Messina very well, and I met Joey 2 or 3 times during my time in that life. But I didn't know him well. I liked him when I met him, I'll be honest with you. He gets convicted of 7 murders. He comes up with a story, whether it be true or not. A lot of people in government did not believe that it was true. A lot of people in government were upset that he was given a sweetheart deal. He goes into the program, His sentence for, I think he had, 3 life sentences. He was never coming home. They reduced his sentence, I think, to 11 years. He gets out. Here's my issue with all of this. Guys on the street are manipulative. Do you think it's right? I'm asking you this question. Do you think it's right for guys to turn against guys that they were once in business with, once in a life with, to try to shorten their prison sentences, to get out of jail early? Do you think it's right to give people up like that? I don't know. I mean, to me, it just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right that you should reward people for helping you build a case. I don't think it's right. I think the government has to find some other method, in my opinion, or they have to be really careful in who they allow to go into that program and not be manipulated by it, because it's manipulated all the time. Guys on the street realize, hey, I come up with a story, I give up, I don't want to do the prison time. And a lot of guys have a lot of stories about why they entered the program, why they turned their back on people, why they gave up their friends. A lot of guys have different stories. Well, the mob life didn't treat you well. Really? When we get into that life, we know what it's all about. We know what we're facing. And all of a sudden, the mob life didn't treat you right. So that gives you the okay, to go against people that you were in business with that time to save yourself. And I'll tell you, I don't care what anybody says. There's no righteous reason for doing this. When people go into the program and turn informant, they do it for the major reason is to shorten their prison sentence. They don't want to go to jail. I mean, that's the bottom line. Nobody wants to go to jail. So the government has given the street an effective tool to get out of jail. So look, yeah, I have a problem with it, and some of you may say, well, Michael, come on, how else are we going to deal with guys on the street? I don't have the answer. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not in law enforcement, and that's not my deal. I don't need to think about it. Now, if guys on the street turn informants, could their life be in danger? Yeah, if they go back to the same neighborhood, But I know a lot of guys that went into the program were given hundreds of thousands of dollars, given a new identity, a whole new life because they put a couple other guys in prison. And the guys they put in prison, were they worse than those that were given that benefit of being in the program? A lot of times I say no. I'm sorry. But I know a lot of people that went into that program. I know a lot of people and how they were on the street. And the guys that they testified, I'm telling you, the guys that went into the program and did the informing, they were worse than the guys they testified against. So, look, I'm going to leave it at that. This is obviously a sore subject for me because of what it did to my family. My father, 40 years for a crime he didn't commit. And by the way, let me tell you, a lot of people say, Michael, what are you complaining about? Your father was a bad guy. Your father might have committed murders. Your father might have done this. And why are you whining now? I'm not whining. But I will tell you this, and this is what I believe. We are a country of laws. Law enforcement is supposed to enforce the laws. They're not supposed to break the laws to catch a criminal. That's not what it's all about. You can't do that because if you do it against one person, you're going to do it against a lot. And you know what? People in government, the FBI, and I think we're seeing that now. I'm not going to get into what's going on currently. I will get into that in my book, A Mafia Democracy, coming out soon. You can watch for it. But you cannot be in law enforcement. You cannot be a prosecutor and break the law to go out to get criminals, because then what do we have? What do we have at that point? You may as well be a dictator. We may as well be a third world country. You may as well be China or Iran. Hey, don't give them a trial. Just kill them. Just put them in jail. You cannot break the law to catch criminals. That's not what law enforcement does. They have enough tools, enough weapons to go against people legally and legitimately. And that's what they're supposed to do. People ask me all the time, I'll go back to the O.J. Simpson case. Michael, O.J. Simpson got away with murder. You know what? I believe he did. I really do. You know what? I'm sorry. I knew those people. My family knew those people. I believe that O.J. Simpson got away with murder. But here's what I also believe. The government has a burden. They have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury. If the government doesn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, that's the standard in our criminal justice system, then I believe that person must go free. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's our system. That's how we maintain a republic, a democracy, by the people, for the people. That's how we protect the innocent. Because if you start breaking laws against guilty people, people that you assume to be guilty, then you're going to start breaking them against innocent people to serve your own agenda. You can't allow that to happen. And you know what? Decent, honest people in law enforcement that I know, I've spoken about this with them many times, and they agree with me. Hey, Michael, we can't break the law to go out and catch a criminal. Our whole system falls apart at that point. We have to abide by the laws. We have to use the tools. Congress has given us so much ammunition. Do you have any idea how many laws are on our books? You would be flabbergasted. You should read up on this. There's thousands of laws on the books, and they have so many tools to enforce those laws. They don't need to break the laws to do it, you know? Because let me tell you something, they'll catch a criminal eventually. There's no doubt about it. They're going to get him. They know what they're doing. That's why the conviction rates in the federal system are 95, 96%. People don't go free that easy. You know, there's a feeling out there that made people go free. They don't. Most of the times, you're getting caught. The greater percentage of time, you get caught, you commit a crime, you're going down. That's the way it is. So, you know, look, you can comment. I'd love to hear some of your comments on this, you know, and maybe we can debate. I don't get to see them all because I get thousands of comments, but every once in a while I'll peek in there. And this is a subject that's very interesting to me. So, yeah, give me your comments. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's okay for law enforcement, you know, to use the witness protection program to go after somebody they really want and give all of these benefits to another criminal, okay, who may not be as important, may not have as big a name? Do you think it's okay for criminals to manipulate the witness protection program to save themselves prison time and put another person in jail? I don't like any of that. None of that sounds good. It's hurt my family in a big way. It's hurt a lot of families, people that I know, and you don't reward criminals that way. I'm sorry. That's my feeling. Criminals don't get rewarded. Certain cases, yeah, but when it comes to guys on the street, trust me, it's not the way to go. I know. I lived that life. I was born into that life in a way. I get it. So that's it for today. Yeah, it's a sore spot. I think you saw a little passion come out in me in this, and you know, something had happened during the week that kind of stimulated this thought in me. So I'm sharing it all with you, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. So that's it for today. You know, thank you again for tuning in. And how do I always leave you? The same way. Be safe. Be healthy. God bless you, and I really mean that. God bless you, and I will see you next time. Thank you.